Okay, if we can have your attention, then we'd like to get started. One of the things we are aware is that there are a number of people who do not recognize or know the other people. So I would like to go around from table to table and have you introduce yourself, speak your name very clearly and loudly for that. Now, so I'll start over here because Linda just put a piece of cake in her mouth, so she'll want us to do that. Let's start here with Jane.
I'm Jane Boland. Dick and Anna Marie Aufdencamps, not youngest, but second. Everybody thinks I'm the baby. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm Beverly Gerwin. Ed and Phyllis Aufdencamp were my parents.
Okay, Eileen.
Well, I'm Eileen Aufdencamp. My husband was Herman. His parents were William and Lena Meaning Aufdencamp. They lived on the home place.
On Kramer Road.
On Kramer Road. And the grandparents, my husband's grandparents, they lived there. And then when Bill and Lena got married, well, then I think that's when they made an addition onto the house. The living room and also the bedroom. And then that's where they lived.
Okay.
There's a picture in there of the house.
Okay, Lois.
Lois St. Clair, Richard and Anna Marie's daughter. Linda Aufdencamp, Richard and Anna Marie's oldest daughter.
Okay. Russell.
Russ Seek, Harold Seek's son. Helene Aufdencamp was one of the older bunch of 8.
Yes. 9. There were 9 of them.
Okay, 9.
Yes. Hey, Norma.
I'm Norma Gerke, I'm Fred Gerke's wife.
Phyllis Charles. Our grandmother was Anna Aufdencamp Escador.
And I'm the youngest of the Walker girls. Out of 11 kids, we're down to 4, 2 sisters and a brother. And my name is Rita. I lived in Germany for a year while my first husband was in the service. And then I went back on a trip with my cousins.
Okay.
I'm Leon Cheeks, and these are my 2 sisters, and I'm probably the oldest one living right now. Oldest sister. I got a brother 2 years older than me.
What was your first name?
Leona.
Leona. Thank you.
And Anna Aufdencamp, grandmother then.
We grew up on the Carter, which is now the Carter Historic Farm.
Oh, okay.
So
Well, I think I heard it, but I forgot. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I am Karen Hagemeyer. I'm married to John Hagemeyer, who is Edith Aufdencamp's grandson.
Good. Glad you're here.
Yeah.
I'm Charles Aufdencamp, Bill and Joanne Aufdencamp's son. My sisters, they wanted to get here today, but it just didn't work out for them. This is my wife, Theda. I think we've been married 3 years now. Everybody was surprised. I was a bachelor quite a long time.
Good.
I'm Fred Gerke, Tom's brother that didn't get in trouble. I was an angel.
Okay, over here.
Judy Roosevelt, daughter of Ernie Bachreeder, Josephine Aufdencamp.
Pam Tyson, well, Bachreeder. Evan and Kay, parents,
Stand in front of you.
and Henry and Josephine. Right?
Yes. Yes.
Jana Miller, Judy's sister, and Ernie Bachreeder, and Josephine and Henry Bachreeder.
Jeff Bachreeder, was Evan Bachreeder's boy, which was back to Henry and Josephine Aufdencamp with my grandparents. And this is my wife, Deb.
Deb. Good.
Welcome.
Okay. Chet.
Oh, my turn. Okay. I'm not an officer, in case you didn't know. We really couldn't tell. I infiltrated the Henry and Maybelle Aufdencamp family by marrying their daughter, Carol.
Yes,
I'm Carol Crowley, Maybelle Henry's number 5 daughter.
I'm Antoine.
This is my husband, Anthony. Don't believe anything he says. He's a jokester. And I'm Donna, Henry and Maybelle's youngest.
Oh, you stole my shirt.
Yeah.
Not from France. No, no, not from
Not
France.
from France.
I'm Mary, my name now is Mary. I'm Mary now, but I used to be in Aufdencamp. I'm Henry and Maybelle's daughter, and Ron is my husband.
I'm Dale Bachrader. My parents were Norman and Mildred.
Okay. And over here,
I'm Don Gerke. Tom's brother, Paul and Marie, were our parents, and Sue is my wife.
good.
My name is Ken Gerke. It sometimes gets confusing. My uncle is Ken Gerke. He lives in Columbus. And my dad is Fred Gerke. So I am the grandson of Marie and Paul Gerke. This is my wife of 30 years, Kelly Gerke.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm Andrea Whitmer. I am Fred's daughter, and I am a granddaughter of Marie Aufdencamp.
Yes. Okay.
I'm Roger St. Clair. I'm Lois's husband.
And Lois is on the other table. Okay, so,
One back there.
oh, yes.
Charlotte Wilson, daughter of Don and Anthony, granddaughter of Henry and Maybelle.
Okay, Charlotte is going to put these papers that you have in front of you up on the screen so that I can use a laser pointer to point at what I'm talking about so that you can find it on your paper more easily. So it'll show up at the screen here. If you want to move to a different location or switch around, that would be fine. And that I'd like to just scan through some stuff. You can ask questions as we go, or you can ask questions later on. But this is kind of a brief overview of things that I have learned about 40 years ago. And I've decided I'm not getting any younger. And so if I'm to kind of share this stuff, we have to do it at some point. So I appreciate your coming and doing that. So I'd like to start with this map of Germany. You don't have this map among your papers, but this map shows the various states in Germany. And so you see the state of Niedersachsen up there, of which the capital city is Hanover, and that it's a rather large state. It used to be the country of Hanover until 1870. And then when Germany became united, then it became a state. So you'll notice that there's this little section down here that kind of dips down. That is the area of our ancestry. And so the larger city of Osnabrück would be about in this area right here. And that Bohr would be right along here. And then across the border would be Rüdinghausen. And so this border not only separates one church parish from another, but it separates two counties, and it separates two states, and it used to separate two countries. So in a little bit, you'll see this border being very pronounced. But the fact that that border is there impacted that situation. So the next map will kind of show this area. So if we can see the map of Osnabrück, you have that map in your papers. There we are. And so we have the large city of Osnabrück, and we'll see the various towns. I think we need to bring it back out a little bit of kind of the regular size, because this area of Ohio, where the Great Black Swamp was among the last areas of Ohio to be settled. And so this area up here, called Fenne, Venne, is an area of which this area to the north was swampland at some point, and they knew how to, they had drained it and got it to where they could use it for farming. So there were lots of people that came from this town of Fenne. Notice the letter V is pronounced F in German. So lots of them came to the Woodville area, and they helped to get the swamp under control. So you notice that they helped clean the rivers, they helped dig the ditches, and they helped put in tiling. Well, you might think the purpose for tiling is to drain the water when it rains a lot, and that's true. But the primary reason for the tiling is to lower the water table. And as such, it would make the upper land usable. So here we have 6 church parishes basically came over to settle in the Pemberville Lucky area. We have Fenne, we have Bompta, we have Schledehausen. Let's see if I can see Schledehausen.
Right at the end of Osnabrück.
Thank you. Okay, here's Schledehausen, that church parish. And then we've got Bad Essen here, and we have Buer, B-U-E-R, and Rudinghausen. These 6 church parishes were the ones that pretty much were the German immigrants to this area. There were some from other areas, but the majority came from here. So notice that as you do the readings for this stuff, they were in the feudal system until 1805, when Napoleon came through with his armies and put an end to the feudal system, which is kind of similar to slavery. And that then in 1830, the law changed in this area to allow people to leave where they are and either move to another area or immigrate to the United States. So so you started having the mass migration, of which our Epka people from Fenne and the Seal Scots came in 1832. So that was pretty early on. In the reading, you'll see some other things. Let's see. One of the things they talk about is the Romans that were there during the time of the Caesars, and so there was a large Roman camp just off the side here, of which they had 22,000 Roman soldiers plus their entire entourage. And in the year 9 AD, the Germans in that area decided to get rid of those soldiers because they tried to make this part of Germany part of the ancient Roman Empire of the Caesars. And they ended up defeating the entire Roman army. And the final battle took place near Fenne here, just a little bit off the map. So that's a milestone there. During the 30 Years' War, you'll see in the town hall here is where they did the negotiations and the signing of the end of the 30 Years' War. You'll see just to the left here, it'll say Atter, A-T-T-E-R. That's where Friedel Bachbrader had the airport where he managed, and his wife kind of ran the diner in that airport. And up by Fenne, just to the south there, is where Heine Bachbrader's brother Fritz had his mill. I think it was a sawmill for sawing wood, but it could have been for grain too. Fritz's wife was a Wilms, which gets connected with our Meyer side of the family. So let's look at the Boer church, the Boer thing. This Osnabrück map is about 25 miles across and 20 miles north and south. So it's kind of like a township or a county map. Okay, and here is the Boer church parish. So this is very similar to a township map. So it's probably 4 miles from top to bottom and 3 miles across. And so you'll see up on the top here, if we could bring it a little up, and can we do the upper? Yes, good. Okay, Meesdorf is important because that's where the Aufdencamps were hired people for the Witte farm, and that Witte farm is kind of right in here, and that was old house number 5. They had 2 worker houses, one right on the farm there, and the other one down the road here. About right there was the other one, but for some generations, they were the worker family for that Witte farm, and they did a lot of working with sheep. Over here was where Heine Bachbreder was born, and that's considered Meesdorf area. And then up here is where the Wachter family came from. That was there. You'll see back in here is where the Greives and the Schmidts came from. And Pagebreiter down here is the name of a piece of land, but that's where the old original Bachbreder house was that gave the name Bachbreder. And over here is where Bill Walters was born and grew up. So it was all in this area. And down below that is then the town of Boer where the church was. And Heine told me that in 1924, he was attending church in March, and Bill Walters and his brother, I think it may have been Heine, were standing in the doorway after church to go outdoors, and they made the comment that we are going to the United States on Saturday. Do you want to come with us? And Heine immediately said yes, and they did. And so they would have had to go up to the town of Bremen, which would be the northern part of that state of Niedersachsen, onto a liner to go off of there. But that's there. You get down south here, you come to Tittendorf, and that is where some of the later Aufdencamps were born. Charlie Aufdencamp's father was Ernst, and Ernst had an older sister, Maria, who married a Baumlitz, and she was born in Meesdorf, but he was born in 1853 in Tittendorf, and from then on they were in Tittendorf. So were the Oberdicks, workers there. And we get over here to Balkenkamp, and that's where the Meyers were, and still are. So that's where the Meyer family comes in. Over here is Bolsten. Over here is Meyer zum Wischen, which was also a large farm, which had 2 houses for the hired people. So that meant there could have been up to 8 families that worked on that farm. And Heine Bachbreder thought this is where the Aufdencamps were, but it's a little confusing. It could be that Charlie was born here, or he was born there, but they are close by. And then we get down into the Diendorf area, and that's where the Nienhusers come in to the family. So we can show that again, but I want to move along rather quickly. So I'd like to look at the Aufdencamp ancestry chart. So you notice the name Aufdencamp looks like a prepositional phrase, and it is. That the campa comes from the old Roman term campus, which means a field suitable to set up a camp. That means that it's somewhat rounded, because when it rains, you don't want water to collect. You want water to drain off on the sides. And so a campa would be a rounded hill that water would not gather in the middle. And so the phrase Aufdencamp would be used to indicate on the highest point of that hill. So if you said, Ich stehe auf dem Camp, I am standing on the highest point of this field. Hence the name Aufdencamp. I think the family name Aufdencamp came from an Aufdencamp farm in Bad Essen. So we start here with Charlie Aufdencamp, who was born in Tittendorf, and that at the age of 4 came over to the United States with his parents and 2 siblings. His older brother, Fred, who eventually moved to California, who was either 6 or 7, and his younger sister, Mary, who was 1 year old. They came over and came to Pemberville, lived in Pemberville, and then they moved out onto Lucky Road and lived at 3 different or at least 2 different places on Lucky Road, and then went to next to Eisenhower Ridge Cemetery, and then moved to Kramer Road on the north side of Kramer Road. And then when the farm became available on the south side of Kramer Road, that's where they moved in 1895, and that's where they stayed thereafter. So Charles then, when he got older, went to work for the Ohio Oil Company out on Greensburg Pike down near Rudolph. So his mother's ancestry I have on a second sheet of paper. So Charlie's father was Ernst Aufdencamp, who was born in Tittendorf, 1853, but his older sister was born in Miesdorf in 1851. And so he came and brought his family and died 1927 there on the farm on Kramer Road. His parents, his father was born in Miesdorf, and notice that they moved around 1852 to Tittendorf, and so that's where he died. So notice his mother also died in Tittendorf, but she and he were born while the feudal system of serfs and farmers and knights and lords and them were in effect. But she died, or he died in Miesdorf. I'm moving along kind of fast. I don't know much about this family except for they had a connection to Diendorf, which is on the south side of the church parish. Okay, so let's move to the Meyer. Okay, and so we see Caroline Meyer is Charlie Aufdencamp's mother, and that, so she was born 1857 in Diendorf, came to the United States with her husband and those 3 kids. So I'd like to start, if we could move it over, I'd like to start over and bring it down just a little bit. Is that it? Yes, I think that's it. Okay, so this here is interesting to me because Catherine Wortmann inherited a big farm. That her parents had the Wortmann farm in Balkenkamp, and they evidently had no sons, and Catherine was the oldest daughter. So she inherited that farm, and so she married Joost, who was born Groley, and in that area, people take on the name of the farm, so he became Joost Wortmann. Well, Clara, their daughter, did not inherit that big farm, but she convinced her parents to take about 2 acres of that farm and grant it to her. And so she had ownership of a farm, which meant they had rights. If they were workers, they would essentially have no rights. But because they owned a little bit of property, they had some standing, so they were called a Neubauer, or a new farmer, and that they had enough to have some pasture area and able to raise some grain and some vegetables and that. And so she married a Johann Meyer. The Meyers, prior to that, moved from farm to farm, and so there was not any consistency. But Johann Meyer from Miesdorf married her, and so this house is still in the Meyer family, and I have been visiting with that family since 2002, and so now that house and piece of property is owned by Margaret and Heiner Wilms, and that. But Margaret is the Meyer relative. So he dies in Germany, and so their son Franz is not the oldest son, and so he does not inherit this property. And so there's even another son who had to leave and went to Cleveland, and we got in touch with that family. It's interesting because they have a big house in Cleveland, but no apparent source of income. So we're still kind of working on that. But Franz was one of the other kids, and so he had to go elsewhere. So he married Florentine Nienhuser, and whereas Franz died in Germany, Florentine came over to the United States with her 4 children. Now, they didn't all come at the same time. She came with her 2 sons, and the 2 daughters, Caroline Meyer, came with her sister Clara, who married the Torvella, and so Clara and the other 2 sons moved to northern Kentucky. So you might remember, or might have been down to Milton, Kentucky, and have seen where she is buried in the Lutheran Church cemetery overlooking the Ohio River. So Florentine has the ancestors of Brockseek. The Brockseek family had worked for the Schauf family for many generations. And so we know where that Schauf family is, and we've talked with them, and we've been inside the hired people's house and so forth, and so that's been interesting. I don't know much more about the other things. So I want to say, so this Florentine Brockseek, I should say her husband did come to the United States in 1845 by himself, went to Cincinnati. His name is listed in the health department records in Cincinnati, and he went back to Germany and died 1847. So his wife, Florentine Broxiek Nienhuser, came to the United States with all of her children and all of her grandchildren except for one. One grandchild, a sister to Caroline Meyer, stayed in Germany. She had married Karl. I should be able to come up with that name very quickly, but they were already established, and so they stayed. All of the other ones, Florentine and her children and grandchildren, some of them went to northern Kentucky, but the vast majority went to southeast Indiana, except for one, Caroline. She was the oddball. She and Ernst went to Pemberville. And so that's why you had all these people coming from northern Kentucky and southeast Indiana to go visit with the Aufdencamps. And Charlie Aufdencamp and Dory would go down every year for 2 weeks and stay with the people down there and help with the tobacco harvest. Okay, let's go to the third one. And so this is Charlie Aufdencamp's wife. So Mary Epke. So she was born very near the Marsh Funeral Home in Pemberville, which is at the corner of 105 and Lemoyne Road. So if you went north on Lemoyne Road just a little bit, the first house on the right, I think of it as the Reitzel Farm. That used to belong to John Henry Epke's sister. She never married, but she had the farm, and Gerhardt and his wife Louisa were working that farm, and Mary was the oldest of 7 children to be born on that farm. They when the youngest child was about one month old, then Gerhardt died. And there was no man to do the farm work. John Henry's sister had previously died, and John inherited the farm. And so John made Louise Baumlitz and her children move. They went to Silverwood Road, just north of Highway 6, the house where Linda Dirkseide Roberts lived, and now one of their daughters lives there. And so that's where they lived. But Mary was 15 years old when that is, about the time when they start working for other people. She went to work as a housekeeper for the Amos farm on Kramer Road, about 2 houses to the east of the Aufdencamps. And so at some point or other, she became acquainted with Charlie. And they got married in 1906 and went to live in Rudolph, because that's near where Charlie was working for the Ohio Oil Company. And so at first they were living in a house on Rudolph Road. So that's where Josephine, Ernest, and Frida and Pauline were born. Did I skip somebody? No. Okay, and then Charlie Aufdencamp bought that farm on Greensburg Pike in 1914. So then that's where Mildred and Henry and Marie and William and Richard were born. So notice that Mary Epke died in 1934. She got a simple wooden sliver in her forefinger of her right hand. It became affected. Sulfa drugs, things like penicillin and that were known, but not every doctor had them. And so they used the doctor in Portage, and he did not have penicillin, nor tetanus shots. And so she developed gangrene. They amputated her finger in the hopes of doing that, now of saving her. So notice that there was no anesthesia. They gave her quite a bit of whiskey and gave her a damp rag to bite down on, and they sawed off her finger. And that, but she still died then in 1934, and in 1936 the house burnt down. So Charlie and Richard went to live with Mildred and Norman, and then Mildred and Norman built another house on Charlie's property, not on the same spot, but at another location on the farm. And they were there until Charlie sold the farm in 1941, married Dora, and moved into Bowling Green. So what is Mary's ancestry? If we start down here, we see that we have a Gerhard Epke who was born Sealscott. He had grandparents who owned the Epke farm, but they had no heirs to leave the farm to. And as they were getting older and could not take care of things anymore, they asked their grandson, who was living on the Sealscott farm, to come with his wife, Adelheid Schneiders, to come and work the farm and take care of the older people. So the older people died, and then eventually this Gerhardt died. So the farm was inherited by John Henry Epke, and so he sold the farm, and I think came over with some Sealscotts. So he brought himself and his sister and his mother, and they settled on 582, just to the east of Pemberville Road, close by where the Otterbein retirement community is. So if you're going from Pemberville Road, going east on the north side, the first farm was a Sealscott farm, the old home place for the Sealscotts. The next one was John Epke's farm. The next farm was their John's son, Emmanuel, and the next farm was the youngest son, Eberhard, who married the Henline. And that one, the one that married the Henline, that's where, what's her name, used to live. Welling, Emma Welling, used to live, and that. And so that's there. Okay, the wife of the John Henry Epke is a Hilker. And so the Gerhard Hilker and his wife was Anna Maria Engel Samson. Engel means angel. And the Samsons worked for many generations on the property as hired people for a noble family, and that place was called Langalaga. And so they got married to Gerhard Hilker, who had a farm in that area, and this couple had no sons but 7 daughters. Kind of reminds you of another couple there. Well, one daughter died in Germany, and so they immigrated in 1840 with their 6 daughters. And so notice this is the Samson. So they lived at the other end of 582, where 23 intersects. And so if you're on the north side of 582, going west from 23, the first farm was a Sampson home place, and the next place was the Hilker place. So Gerhard Hilker died in 1851. Notice that there were no churches established in the area yet. 1862 is when Woodville and Schweitz and Pemberville and them came about. And so he was in a, I think, cholera epidemic. And so I asked his granddaughter, some of you may know her, Helen Rothfuss. And because she lived on the Rothfuss place, which was right near. And she said on that property, there was a pile of fieldstone. And it was known that no one was to ever bother that pile of fieldstone. So it was her best guess that that's where Gerhard Hilker was born. So he came to the United States 1840 and was here only 11 years. But his wife, the Sampson, and of course the name added a P later on, lived to be quite old. So their daughter married an Epka. The other 5, one married a Hahn, one married a Roth, one married a Rothfuss, one married a Linke, and one married a Hartman. And so we've got relatives all over the place. So that is there. So they had, I think, 6 children, of which Gerhard was the 3rd oldest. The oldest one married an Engelhardt and moved to Genoa. Second one was Emmanuel. And then there was a Frederick who never married. Emmanuel never married. There was one that married a Bustecker, one that married an Osten, and then one that married a Henlein. So that brings us down this line. On this line through the Baumlets, not much information here because they were foster children. They had no parents, but it was the Kreienkamp family, those related to Norman Kreienkamp in Germany, were the ones that raised those Baumlets children. And so this Caspar Baumlets married a Turner. The Turner family worked for many generations as workers for the Steinmeier family in Germany. And Mr. Steinmeier was president of the city council when the relationship between Pemberville and Rudinghausen was set up. So Caspar Baumlets died in Germany, but Caroline came to the United States with her oldest son, Wilhelm, who married the Aufdencamp. So she came over, and these had 5 children, 3 daughters and 1 son. That Louise was one daughter that married the Epke. Another daughter married a Banke from Elliston. Another daughter married a Fisher from Rocky Ridge. And then one brother was Elmer Baumlitz's father, Henry Baumlitz, and another one was Wilhelm Baumlitz, who lived on the farm on Kramer Road, the next farm west from the Aufdencamp farm. And so that's just a quick look at some of those things. I'd like to invite questions because I didn't want to drag it out. I know I went quickly, but are there any questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Dale?
Talking about the farm on Greensburg Pike.
Mm-hmm.
House burned down in 41, was it? Or, no.
36.
36. You said my folks moved into another house?
Your folks were living elsewhere.
Well, Donald gave me some pictures. At Greensburg Pike. And there's a picture of Richard, Bobby, and my mother. And there's an old, looks like part of an old house, and they're building a new foundation.
Oh.
And I thought that was rebuilding the original house.
Well, I haven't seen that photo, and that, so Don is hiding it from me. Well, if you scan it and send it, yeah, that would be good.
Bobby, I mean, I'm trying to figure ages. I mean, he was little. He couldn't have been more than 2 years old, so that would have been 1940, because he was born in 38.
He was born in 38, yeah.
Now, Richard was, he looked like he was maybe 10 or 11. I don't know what year he was born.
26. So he was 10 when the house burnt down, thereabouts.
So I was just, I couldn't quite figure it out. It looked to me like this was, they were building onto another house.
Yeah.
They were rebuilding the old house.
Mm-hmm.
But
It could very well be. What I found strange is that, you know, I asked my mother a lot of questions, and she just didn't have much to say about that property. We drove by once when I was with her, and she said, yeah, I'm going by, but she never in particular said that was the farm. And so when I'm asking a lot of other people about that, now Ernie Aufdencamp knew it because he had been there a number of times and played with the people across the street and that, so he was aware where that was. But a lot of the other cousins had a similar situation, that their parents didn't really, you know, lift up that farm. So
my mother tried to drive me by it one time, and I don't think she could find it.
Mm-hmm.
This was years ago.
Okay. Well, and that's possible.
And the house would have been there anyway.
The house was not there. But I think what's interesting is that so much in history is not that long ago. The end of the feudal system was 1805. That's significant. 1830, they were allowed to move from one farm to another, or even leave the area to go to another state, or even to the United States. That's not that long ago. When I look at my parents' house, it was 1948 when they did an extensive remodeling of the house, of which they had electricity put in, and inside toilets with running water, and the whole house was heated. And those things, which we just kind of take for granted, was not there. And that's not that long ago. So at the house on Greensburg Pike, they had no electricity, no water. They had a wood-fired cook stove in the kitchen and a wood-fired potbelly stove in the parlor to heat the house. But for water, they had to go 50 yards to the west to a grove of trees and crank a pump to get water into a pail and carry it over to the house. But they also had animals. They had a horse and dairy cows, and a few dairy cows, and some pigs and chickens, and maybe some other things. I don't know if they might have had some beef, probably had a beef cow, but it was not a luxurious life. My mother said they raised lots of different things because it was like a big garden there. People lived off their gardens, and the animals lived off the fields. So there was not a whole lot of taking things to the market, because you had your hay and corn and oats and those things to feed the cattle. And then you had your things that you did the canning, raised a lot of cabbage for sauerkraut and pickles and tomato juice and all that for living through the year. So that all had to be done by hand. My mother, in her retirement years, someone says, Marie, would you like to have some starter dough and kind of make some homemade bread? That was a clear no from her. that she had to, do all that baking when her mother died, because she was then the only girl left in the house. So it was assumed she would do all of the womanly chores. Was she still there? Okay.
My mother, your mother, Richard, Henry,
And
Bill.
and Bill, yeah.
Do you have a picture of the house? I have a picture
Yeah.
of your house.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. A couple, I think. Well, no, one, I think, there. So, but that's.
People here have brought various things you might announce if people want to know what all's available, because people have brought things here.
Okay. Charlotte back here is wanting to take a photo or scan those and kind of make those available digitally, and that. However, she wants to know what they are, so we want to have a quiet place where she can record what is there. Do people want to kind of just let others know what they have?
I just have some from my dad's stuff. I don't do that.
Okay.
And then I have some other pictures that we can scan in that people can.
Okay. Charlotte will want to take a look at those, and I'll come and see if I can identify any. But Don is the one who would be good, and Russell. And Fred is over there, but Russell is a good one too.
I just got a question. You got all our cousins there. How many used to go to the Bowling Green Shelter House or the reunion?
For the reunion on the first Sunday of July, the Bowling Green Shelter House.
Had to wait an hour after they ate to go to the school. That was the rule. Parents said you gotta wait an hour before you go to school.
Yes.
Nowadays they don't even wait an hour anymore.
Okay.